Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, public speakers, soapbox spruikers, and, well, anyone with a good message to spread. Welcome to another excellent Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. In today's episode, we're raising the dead and giving back a voice to celebrities that have been long gone. There's no black magic here, though. It's all good, clean AI fun. And speaking of AI fun, anything you can do that you can do, AI can do better. AI has taken up playing video games, and bad luck, there goes your top score, folks. There's no good news for gamers there. And we'll take a look at a surprising shift in modern aeronautics. Apparently, a big and boxy-looking contraption is the new black in the skies of 2024. Hell, as long as the doors and wheels stay on, how bad could it possibly be? And here to make the substance from the headlines is the bloke with a head full of details, assuming the position in the comfy chair. It's Matthew Dickerson. How's your week been, Matt?
Really good, actually. I've rediscovered something I haven't done a lot of in recent years. I used to do a lot of programming many years ago in one of my businesses, and we used to write programs and sell programs, and I used to love diving in and actually writing stuff, but I haven't done a lot of that lately. But I had a need to do some programming over the last couple of weeks, and I've just rediscovered the love for it. I am a bit addicted.
It's some high-level problem solving, isn't it?
Well, there's a few things that are addictive about it, and I am a slightly addictive personality, so that probably doesn't help the situation. But the first thing is exactly right. You've got to go through a logical process to solve a problem. Here's a problem we've got to solve. What are the steps to go through A, B, C, D? There's the end. But it's actually really satisfying when you write some code, when you write some lines, and then you run a test and you go, oh, it does exactly what I wanted it to do. Or sometimes it doesn't, because that's one thing that I often say to people.
I think you've got to solve a
computers.
problem to find the glitch, but yeah.
Well, that's right. But some people, I often say to people, computers typically, and forget AI for the moment, computers typically are really obedient but really stupid. They'll do exactly what they're told to do, even if it's not what you wanted them to do or not what the intention was. Whatever coding, whatever instructions you give them, they'll follow that out perfectly. So you've got to make sure you're very clear with those instructions. It's not going to think for itself. But it is quite addictive. It's quite satisfying. And you do feel like you're solving little problems, and you do feel like you're just going through and saying, look, I just put those few little bits there and this is the little outcome I got there. Well, it's quite satisfying. But the biggest problem I have now is I'll be doing something like recording a podcast and I go, gee, it'll be nice when I finish this so I can get back into my programming. So I've got
so you're a bit distracted then, are you?
Well, I've got to get past the little project I've just got to finish off so I can get back to my real world and do things normally, because it is addictive, and it probably, you're right, it's probably distracting, but incredibly enjoyable. I recommend it to anyone out there just to go and do a little bit of programming for some little thing they want to do, just to solve little problems and feel good about themselves. I actually used to do when I was at uni.
That is nerding out in a big way, man.
It is. I did, when I was at uni, one of my brothers was a painter and decorator. And so I remember in uni holidays, to earn some money, I used to go painting with him, and he used to talk about the fact that it was incredibly satisfying. You've got a wall that doesn't look so good, you sand it back and get it ready, and then you paint it, and you can see where you've been, and you stand back at the end and you go, look at that wall. That wall looks better. Now, I agreed with him for the short period of time that I was doing. I'm not sure if I want to do it
Until
forever.
you had to do the clean up and you went, was it really?
That's right, out there washing brushes out. But programming's a bit the same. You go, I've got a blank canvas, and now I'll go and put this stuff here, and I'll click this button here, and oh, look at that. How exciting is that? So, yes, it is a bit nerdy. I do apologise. But it seems like it's somewhat more satisfying than playing games. And I talked about Pico Park last week, and it was satisfying solving a level, but it didn't really make a difference in the world. It was just solving a level.
Was that the thing that reawakened you? You realised, well, this is like problem solving. Do you know what's a higher level problem solving? Programming.
Well, no. It sounds good, but no.
Okay.
I'd love to say that gaming reawakened that, but I just had a little problem that needed to be solved in one of my businesses, so I just had to go and say, well, the quickest way to do that is I'll just go and write.
So have you had to relearn a language or learn a new language in this programming?
No, it's just I had to relearn to a certain extent, because you go, oh, wait up, I know I can do this. I'll just go and look up the exact syntax. So it's more the syntax, I think, is more the thing. I know I've got a function that'll do this, but is a comma go there or is it there? So it is real. Oh, that's right. Yep. Okay, good. I'll go and do that now. So it probably has been a little bit of relearning. using, and to be honest, hashing up some old code, grabbing some old, all right, there's that function I wrote years ago. Oh, what's this do here again? Glad I wrote some good, oh, that's right, that does that. Good, I'll go and drop this module in there. So, and even, and I was saying it to someone the other day that I used to do a bit of programming with, one of the great annoyances, which was only a very selfish annoyance I had many years ago. I remember writing code in one particular one. There was some access programming. We were doing some database programming. And I remember I wanted to get rid of the X button in the top right-hand corner so someone couldn't close it without going through the button that was on the screen to close the program, because we wanted certain things to happen when you closed it.
Yeah.
To get rid of that X was about 10 lines of code. So not that complicated, but you had to write some code. You had to know what you were doing to get rid of that X. And then the next version of Access came out, and one of the functions that was added in was check this box if you want the X to appear or not appear. I've gone, no, that means anyone can do it now. So as each version came out, it got a little bit better and a bit easier to program, I suppose, was part of that. So again, very selfish, because it was like I had to write code to do that. Now it's just a little checkbox and that's all done. So anyway, it's been quite enjoyable.
Very, very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get busy in the reason that we are here. Now, rev heads in the US will be in uproar, screaming blue murder, as NASCAR debuts its first EV prototype in Chicago recently. Any petrol heads who are sure that EVs are just a passing fad are going to spit chips over this. Matt, this is a big deal. Do you reckon it'll go the distance?
I reckon it's going to change something.
It's got legs.
I'm not sure what it will change, and I'm not sure what the ultimate aim of NASCAR is. So they've unveiled a prototype. It's a pretty impressive prototype. Just to give you a bit of an idea, at the moment in NASCAR, they typically run 5.8 litre V8s. So they've got a bit of volume about them in terms of the actual size of the engine. Obviously, they're highly tuned, so they're quite powerful. So they produce about 560 kilowatts maximum power. So again, not too bad. They might do that at 6,000 or 7,000 revs. I'm not sure exactly what they produce that at, but they sound loud. Anyone that's been near any race cars, they know they're loud. It's compulsory. That's part of the enjoyment, isn't it? That you've got to wear earplugs to enjoy this particular event.
It's going to change everything, isn't it?
Well, when you start to talk about this, now what they've got with this first one is it's almost like an SUV type shape, which is interesting because SUVs are so popular. They've obviously said, well, forget the sedan style, let's go for SUV. But the little one they've got is 1,000 kilowatt maximum power. So compare that to your little 560 kilowatt, close enough to double the power of a NASCAR. It's got a 78 kilowatt hour liquid cooled battery pack. At that sort of power and the speeds they're going, mainly that air resistance, as we've talked about before, you wouldn't get a particularly long race out of that. But again, this is a prototype. This is a starting point. And the pit stops wouldn't be that exciting if you had to recharge them. And Jimmy's come into the pits and we'll just wait for 10 minutes while they charge. And Jim's having a cup of coffee and he's ready to go again now.
Cut to a commercial.
That's right. And another commercial and another commercial. So I think the idea here is just to show what they could possibly do. It's got 3 motors on it, so a lot of powerful EVs tend to do that, at least 2 motors anyway, 1 motor for the front wheels, 1 motor for the back. This has got 1 motor for the front and 2 motors for the back. I'm not sure if each is individually mounted in each rear wheel or whether it's 2 motors to drive the back more powerfully. But ultimately, NASCAR is saying it's the future. We've got to look at the future. And when you consider that many developments for cars that we drive today, many of those occurred on the racetrack, cutting edge, trying to gain thousandth of a second literally in terms of the racetrack performance. You can then translate that to a car that you can go and buy off the street maybe 10 years later, maybe 15 years later. So if we want to develop EVs better, what a great way to develop them better is to put them on a racetrack where suddenly you're putting competition, you're putting prize money, you're putting reputation on the line by making them better.
And you can run your race right past the library without disturbing anyone.
That's right. The wind noise would be more than the actual engine noise. They could make fake engine noise, of course, if they wanted to, but I think part of the attraction is it's not that noise there. And I do. When I go to races, which I do sometimes, I do take my friendly little earplugs and put them in, and you try and have a chat to the guy beside you and you can yell at him. And
just yell. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
You've got to be a lip reader.
When the cars are going past you can yell at the person beside you and they can't hear you because we both got earplugs in. But it's when the cars are on the other part of the track, you might be able to hear each other vaguely. But I don't quite know how they're going to use it. So they've unveiled the prototype. That was at the Chicago street race. So here it is, folks. Here's an SUV that's an EV, a NASCAR. And it's decked out like a NASCAR with all the decals and all the signage over it. But is there a plan to start another race on the same day as a NASCAR race? So
Oh.
preliminary to the main race, here's an SUV or an EV race, or is there plan to put this in the race with the other NASCARs? That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Or are they talking about starting a whole other racing series altogether? I'm not sure. I couldn't find that information. It was really just, here we've got this. I don't know if they know the answer because it was just, here's an EV, we're
Testing
unveiling
the
it.
waters. We'll just see who yelps and who screams and carries on and see what sort of reaction we get and then work it out from there.
Maybe that's part of their plan, but I would love to see some cars like this in the same race
Yeah, wouldn't it
as
be
the
awesome?
NASCARs. Now, of course, you've got so many conditions you can put on cars to try and make them even, but I'm not sure how even it would be with 1,000 kilowatts versus 560
They're also
kilowatts.
heavier though, aren't they?
Yeah, true. So there is that to consider in there. And maybe part of it, maybe they get to the point where they do a battery swap, which might be slower than doing a refueling stop. So maybe they get ahead on the track and NASCAR EV is ahead by 30 seconds, but we know the pit stop's going to take him about 30 seconds longer. This is going to be a tight race, folks. So whether it's like that or whether it's something where they shorten some races and have it so an EV can get through in one charge, I don't know what their big picture plan is, but gee, it's interesting, isn't it?
It is very interesting.
And it's not just a little whim. It's not just, we'll give this a little crack. They've got some major players. They've got Chevy, they've got Ford, they've got Toyota, who've all combined with NASCAR to actually produce this vehicle. So it's not as if it's a passing whim. It's some serious players in there
Yeah, that's right.
who are saying, let's put this in there,
See
put
what
the cat
happens
amongst the
there.
pigeons and see what happens. So I'm excited by it. Of course, we've got Formula E, we've got the Moto E series in Moto or compared to Moto GP. So we have got some other series. We've got Extreme E. So we've got races out there now involving motorbikes and cars that are powered by battery, that are electric ones, and they all seem to be quite successful, although they haven't got the crowds yet that the traditional races, the MotoGP and the Formula One, they haven't got those sort of crowd numbers yet.
And it's going to be a bunch of, quiet talkers as well. People a lot more sedate, perhaps, that are going to be watching these.
Well, it's interesting. Maybe it's a different audience that gets attracted to that. And if that audience has got...
A lot less beer being drunk in the crowd.
Well, maybe that. So
Maybe.
I was looking for the positive on the other side, saying maybe the audience that gets attracted to this has got a bit more disposable income. Therefore, they might be more likely to buy more merchandise.
That's
But I
right.
didn't think of the beer aspect, so that's probably a downside.
Yeah, I was
on
wondering
that.
if there's going to be sipping tea or whatever in the...
Sipping tea, but buying expensive shirts while
there
they
we go.
sip tea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, quite fascinating. Keep an eye on that one. I'm excited to see where it goes. And I'm actually keen to go to a Formula E race or a Moto E race. I haven't been to one. I've been to lots of Formula One and MotoGP, those type of races. But I'm keen to go to one just to see the feel, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because everyone talks about the atmosphere being part of the noise, but does it need the noise? I don't know. Maybe it does.
It'll be something that will just evolve. And I think, we'll wonder what we did before.
Yeah, well, true. Hopefully.
How keen are your eyes? I mean, how easily do you reckon that you could spot the work of AI? Can you even trust your eyes anymore? AI has had the capacity to generate video for quite a while now, and there have been some prize examples that are simply ridiculous, to say the very least. Have you seen the AI Tour de France video? Or maybe the AI beer commercial? They're hilarious, but also enormously disconcerting. But as AI learns from its mistakes, you know that videos will get better and better. Matt, what hope do we have spotting AI video, and why should we even care?
Well, I'll answer the first question. I'm not sure if I can answer the second one, but the first one is I'm going to give you 6 tips today on how to try and spot AI video. Why do we care? I'll leave that as a rhetorical question.
Well, I was going to say, have you seen the Tour de France video?
I haven't seen that one, no.
It's hilarious. Now, it's got all that, it's got the fluidity of what you expect to see when you're watching Tour de France. You've got to look it up, folks. Look it up. I'm sure it's on YouTube. Tour de France AI video. And so it's got all the fluidity, but then the motion just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You've got cyclists going backwards. You've got these things that kind of look like bikes, but was that a bike I just saw?
Yeah,
or was
right.
that something completely different?
Yep.
Not quite a bike.
Yep.
And then this wave just appears, and it looks like, all this peloton's coming at you, but then it's a real wave of just bodies and machine, and bikes and stuff
Mangled
like that.
together.
Mangled all together. It's really disconcerting. And the beer commercial is, you can tell that it's a beer commercial, but it's just got a weirdness about it. Like there's a big party going on, but someone's got 6 fingers and they keep sort of shoving these cans towards their face, but they're not actually drinking.
Yeah,
Anyway, it's a funny sort of a thing.
Well, you've hit on a few of my tips there.
Oh, okay.
So perfect.
Whether or not
there.
it looks like it could be a thing.
So the 6 tips I've got to try and spot fake video, and
Right.
by using a keen eye and some common sense, you've picked up on those 2 videos, but I'm going to give you the 6 tips. First one is text. If there's any text in the video, often that text will be garbled or spelt incorrectly. Now, humans spell things incorrectly as well, but they're spelling mistakes that are kind of a bit obvious. It might be a triple S in a word, and you go, well, there's no words with triple S in it. So it might be spelling errors that don't make sense or that aren't common spelling errors, or it might
Well,
just
in the beer
be
commercial, the brand just looks like it's written in, I don't know, Cyrillic or something. It's
That's
just,
it.
yeah.
Sometimes it's just a garbled mess,
Yeah.
and it's meant to look like some fake script or fake text, but it just looks like it's rubbish.
Yeah.
So keep an eye for that. Even spacing, actually, that's another one I've noticed.
Yeah,
Spacing,
right.
sometimes there'll be a word written, spelled correctly, but 3 of the letters are just really tight together and the rest of the word is spread out. I don't know why AI struggles with text. You'd think that'd be really easy. I'm going to put some text in this. Let me just check that against the dictionary of everything and see that word exists. Why wouldn't that be simple enough? So I don't know why, but AI often gets words wrong.
Well, maybe it's seeing words as a picture rather than actual text. But
Could
I
be
don't
that,
know.
yeah, could be. Now, the second one, tip 2, is rapid cuts. So you'll see a scene, it's looking at one scene, it jumps to another scene, it jumps to a person, it jumps back to another scene, and AI might do that deliberately because it's much harder to pick up, as you were talking about before, is that a bike or not? If it's only on that bike for a second and then goes to another scene,
Yeah,
you probably
right.
haven't got time to absorb that and actually see that, because when we're looking at it, we can't look at
Did
the
I
entire
just see
picture.
6 fingers on that hand? And
That's exactly it, yep.
Has that person got 3 hands? Yeah, yeah.
So that's the second one, is look for those fast cuts. The other one that they try and do is they'll sometimes do some slow motion. If they're doing slow motion, it gives AI a much better chance to render things correctly rather than things moving at, say, at a bike race, moving along quite quickly. If you slow it down and make it all move slowly, then the rendering and the calculations needed to create that image can be done easier with the computing power available.
Right.
So sometimes you might see slow motion in certain shots. You go, why do they put slow motion there? A human probably wouldn't need to put that there. A human director wouldn't need to go slow-mo there, and that might be a bit of a tip that, hold on, they're trying to cover up the lack of power they might have to produce that. The fourth one, and you've mentioned this as well in your little intro in terms of bikes, bad physics.
Yeah, right.
Things that just aren't possible. I've seen videos where someone's walking along and there's a park bench behind them. They're walking close to a park bench, and then some parts of their leg suddenly appear behind the park bench, and the park bench is in front of their calf muscle, but their knee is still in front of it. So it doesn't quite make sense. And then you think, well, that's not physically possible for that to happen. So you get some physical impossibilities, or as you said with a beer, you see someone pouring a beer, but it's not going down their throat.
And it's not going, like they're not connected to it, but there's no flow. It's just weird, and it's just,
Yeah, maybe that's the main
Difficult.
tip, is it's just weird. So keep that in mind.
Well, it's confusing
Yeah. And when you see
because you're
things,
expecting to see something,
correct.
and it's not delivering.
When you see things that aren't normal. So there's a picture I've sometimes used. I haven't used it for a while, actually. There's a picture I got it from Questacon, got permission from Questacon to use it, where it's got a human, normal face, everything looks normal, but it's got 4 eyes, so 2 eyes above your normal eyes. And when you look at it, when the human looks at it, it looks blurry. And there's a part of our brain that says that's not normal, and so our brain gets confused.
Just can't compute it.
Can't compute it, that's right. So it just turns it blurry while you're trying to work it out. So that's what happens sometimes in AI. There are things there that aren't quite right, and so you get a bit confused by them. So that's tip number 4, look out for some physical things. Tip number 5 is a contradiction. Sometimes we'll see things that are perfect, and sometimes we'll see things that are imperfect. Now, I'll explain that more. Sometimes we'll see things that are perfect when maybe they shouldn't be. So there might be patterns in the ground that are absolutely perfect patterns.
Yeah.
Things that you say, well, that's nature there. Nature probably
should
isn't.
be randomness.
There should be some randomness. And sometimes you'll see things that are meant to be perfectly lined up and they're imperfect. So it might be a physical man-made structure that should be lined up, a building, for example, that needs to be square, and suddenly it's a bit different. It's a bit off to one side, and it's not the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So you get things that are different to what you expect. Again, perfect versus imperfect. And the last one, you have mentioned it a couple of times there, the last one is have a look at hands. I can remember back when I was in high school and you had to do compulsory art,
Yeah.
the thing I struggled with the most was a hand. I'd sit down and look
They
at my
reckon
hand.
artists, that's one of the big things. If you can draw a hand, then you can do art.
Oh, it wasn't just me then. Thank
No,
goodness for
no.
that. I thought it was
Yeah,
just my
yeah.
lack of ability. So I used to look at my
Hands
hand
are
every which
tough.
way and I couldn't get my hands right. Well, it appears that the rest of the world apparently and AI struggles with a hand. So sometimes they might have 6 fingers, as you mentioned. Sometimes it might be more subtle. It might be 5 fingers, but maybe 2 of the fingers are kind of joined together.
Yeah, or they're a mess. They make like a web. It's just a web of fingers.
Get that guy in the swimming pool. He'll be fantastic.
Yeah, this guy's got a mangled hand.
That's right. Or I have seen ones where it's got the left and right hand switched over or 2 left hands. So
yeah.
you just see the thumb on the other side of the hand. You think,
Yeah,
well, that
right.
doesn't quite make sense. It's something odd and you've got to think about it and look at it until you can work out it's odd. So I suppose all of those things are ways, but there's no perfect science. There's no way you can say that's definitely an AI video because they're getting so good now. And I suppose to come back to your why do we care question, I suppose one of the things is we need to be aware in the world we live in of things that are real and maybe not so real and misinformation campaigns.
Yeah, misinformation's a big thing, but I think we're almost at a stage where it's probably not going to matter. Like, sorry, outside of misinformation, like if it's an advertising campaign, I can see this being used in advertising because, you know, with the secret of advertising is just get people talking about your ad, get people remembering your ad.
Yep.
Well, how are you going to do that? Well, you've got a person with 6 fingers or this mangled hand then they're putting the beer to their mouth but they're not really pouring it. And
So you deliberately make an ad.
Yeah.
It looks bad.
that's got elements of AI but
Yep.
still has the message you're trying to pass on.
And let's think about the big
I
picture.
need to get into advertising.
That's right. When you think about movies, so you see some incredibly elaborate physical things that are created for movies. And then someone came along and said, well, you know what? We can just put that in front of a green screen and we can do it all with graphics, computer-generated
Yes.
graphics, CGI in the background. Don't waste all your time and money creating all these things
Yeah.
and then make it happen. So let's go a step further than that. Don't worry about a green screen in the background and doing it on CGI. Just let's AI create that in the first place. If you're sitting there watching a movie, I think to your point, do we really care? If you're watching a movie and you see a scene, and if you've got to slow it down and get the magnifying glass out to pick up an error, it probably doesn't matter that much. Sit back and enjoy the movie. That's for entertainment. I suppose the concern is when it's used for deliberate misinformation campaigns
And
or
gaslighting. That's the other thing too. Like when you've seen a movie or you've seen something and you know how something exists and then you see footage of it not like that. Like, Han Solo has been played by Tom Selleck, not Harrison Ford. And you all of a sudden you're thinking, was that right?
yeah, I'm sure it was Harrison. What's going on there?
That's
Yeah.
right. Maybe. Well, I'm seeing it like this now.
How
That
can
must
I
be the
argue?
way it is.
How can I argue against the video? The old joke used to be, believe nothing of what you hear and half of what you read.
Yeah.
But we always used to say, a picture doesn't lie.
Yeah.
A video doesn't lie. If I've seen that video, I know it's right. But now, so maybe we do care.
Gaslighting. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. Anyway, fascinating, but keep an eye out for those. I'd love to hear some feedback from listeners about some other videos like your two that
Sure.
you've mentioned there.
With AI's ability to create speech from samples of voice, it was only going to be a matter of time before we started to hear new material from those old Hollywood stars of yesteryear, celebrities who've been long gone. Why the hell would you want to do this, though, I hear you scream down the speakers? Well, listen up, because Matt has a bunch of reasons why hearing Judy Garland send you a personal message is likely to take off in a big way, Matt.
I think it will take off in a big way. And the company doing this is 11 Labs. Now, we're familiar with 11 Labs because that was who we used when we created our voices for our 100th episode, just to demonstrate a little bit of what can be done with AI. And 11 Labs has actually done the right thing morally and ethically. People might say they're going in the wrong direction, but morally they've gone out to the estates of some of these famous actors and actresses. So you mentioned Judy Garland, James Dean, Burt Reynolds, Sir Laurence Olivier. They've gone to those estates, the people who control those estates, and say, I want to pay you some money to use the voice of one of these famous people for a range of things. And they've created an app. And this app can be used to do different things. So you could, for example, have your emails narrated to you. You're driving along in the car, you've got to catch up on some emails. You can have James Dean come and tell you things. You could have Judy Garland tell you what was on your emails.
Have James Earl Jones read you.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be
that's
cool,
right.
wouldn't it?
So you've got the ability for anything. So basically an article.
He's still kicking around too, is he?
Yeah, so we better not talk
Okay,
about him.
all right,
Passed away. Newsletters, anything that you need to hear, you could hear it in a voice of your choosing. Now, I'm assuming at this stage the copyright wouldn't allow you to then use those voices in an advertising campaign, for example. It's not designed for public use. I'm sure all of the information from 11 Labs would say this is for your own private use. Some people don't read the rules or don't adhere to the rules, of course, so that is a bit of a risk. But Liza Minnelli, Judy Garland's daughter, she said that she was pretty excited about this whole concept of people hearing her mum, maybe discovering her mum, maybe getting new fans for her mum. Now, keep in mind that Judy Garland has not been with us. Well, I think she died about the time I was born. I think she died the late 60s. She was only very young. She was about 47 when she died. So she's probably been gone for my entire time on this earth, but I still heard of her. I still know her name. But I couldn't really tell you exactly what her voice sounded like. But maybe with this sort of thing, some of these actors and actresses, some of these celebrities, it doesn't have to be just actors and actresses. You could have Einstein's voice, for example. You could have someone.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
I'm thinking having Barry White read you your emails with some sexy music playing in the background.
Well, I was actually thinking of sending an email to my loved one with Elvis Presley's voice reading out, something like that. So I think this is scary, but in this case, I think they've been doing it the right way. Some people are still scared about the idea of what will this replace? Will live voice actors suddenly be replaced by some of these? That's a possibility. It's probably it's happening now, not with famous voices, just with AI generated voices, of course. Yeah. And remember, we did the story a little while ago now on Scarlett Johansson, where her voice was used, supposedly not her voice, but close enough to her voice, without her permission. So at least this way, they're doing it the right way. But it just goes to show, doesn't it? When you hear a voice, you see a video, whatever it is out there, you just got to say, is that real? Did that really happen?
We're in a new era now.
It is. And you've got to question everything, which I don't love. I like the idea of being able to trust people, trust what happens. But now I feel like I've got to question everything.
You've got to be thinking over the top of your thoughts to try and get around this. And
I find that when you do that, I've had some conversations with people where they think I'm crazy because we've talked before about the man-in-the-middle scams. So you send an invoice, someone gets in the middle and puts different bank details. So whenever I'm paying a new supplier, whenever I'm paying a large amount, I'll always ring or get our accounts person to ring and check. And I've had those phone calls where I've said, "G'day, just checking, Mary, that's your, or give us your bank details. They're on the invoice." "Yeah, I know they are, but it's checking." "Well, I've put them correct on the invoice." "Yeah, I know you have, but I just want to, can you just tell me?" "Oh, well, I'll go and look. I'll just get your invoice." "Okay, that's fine. Can you just give me a verbal confirmation that these are right? I've got it now. Thanks very much." And they get off the phone going, "That guy was absolutely crazy." But it sounds like I'm being too paranoid now. It sounds like everyone's out to get me.
No, we need to be checking ourselves a little bit more, don't we?
We do. So keep an eye on this. I think we'll see some very interesting voices come back from the past. Names we might have heard of, names we may not have heard of, and I'm not sure how much you'll pay to use these, but there'll be some small fee. I'm sure lots of people would love to do that.
Yeah. For all those kids who aspire to play video games for a living, I have one more piece of career advice for you, and you're probably not going to like it. It's time to listen to your parents, get outside and evaluate your plans. You see, in the classic racing game of Gran Turismo, AI has just taken the fastest lap for the first time without cheating, and I reckon it's a sign of things to come. Matt, was it a fair race or what?
It was this time, and you said it spot on there. It's been cheating in the past. AI has been a big fat cheat. And in the past, Sony created a player called GT Sophie. My daughter's name's Sophie, so I'm not sure if there's any direct attribution there to all the Sophies out there in the world, but I apologise if there is. GT Sophie played Gran Turismo 7 and beat everyone, but it had extra data. It could see the entire track.
Right.
It could see where all the cars were on the track, all those cars, what they were doing, and then could see what a human could see as well. And with all that information, AI won. And I go, well, that's just plain unfair. Let's be reasonable about this. So Sony's gone back to the drawing board, not because I said so, but Sony's gone back to the drawing board and they've developed a new AI model, and all it can see is what you can see. So it can see the track, it can see the track in front of you in the car, and it can see the screen, and that's it. And now go and race. What they did was they created a reward process. If you can take corners faster, if you can not run off the track, you'll get rewards. I don't know what reward you give AI. We'll give you some more processing time, I'm not sure. But basically there were penalties for veering off or slowing down and rewards for going faster or staying on the track. And very quickly it got to the stage where there's 130,000 online races available out there for Gran Turismo 7, and it could beat those the fastest of those 94% of the time. And this is just looking at that information that's on our screen and playing the game based on that. Now, there's probably not, cheating's too harsh a word. It's in a certain set of circumstances. It was only in a time trial, not in a race. It struggles a bit still when there's other cars involved and making decisions about what to do about that car. Do I need to slow down for that car in front of me? Do I need to get around that car somehow? So this was just in time trial mode where it just had a clean track and away it went.
But this is the start of the rot.
Oh, the start of the rot. And the start of happy times as well, because the ultimate aim for all of this testing is to get autonomous vehicles better. It doesn't mean you can get from your place down to pick up a bottle of milk in the fastest time ever in your autonomous vehicle. You'd probably do it very efficiently, but it's not about trying to be the fastest around your local neighbourhood, but it is about trying to control vehicles. On the screen, that's one thing. We know there are races already that are being raced by autonomous physical vehicles where there's no driver, there's only AI driving it. That's getting to the development. But all these things keep developing the whole idea of AI driving a vehicle. Feed all that information into AI vehicles or autonomous vehicles, then you get to the stage where they're getting better and better. We've got them out there, as we know already, but we just need to get them better. So Gran Turismo 7 one day, around our neighbourhood the next day, maybe on a Formula One track the day after.
What about all those kids who've been aspiring to earn millions of dollars playing EA Sports and whatnot, or esports, I should say?
And maybe there'll still be a place for them in some nostalgia area.
You got these 10 and 12-year-olds going, I'm already part of nostalgia?
That's right. I think it's possible.
It hasn't really entered the world yet.
Well, I think your advice is correct. The advice that I've been giving to my kids has been growing up is stop playing games and get out there and do some real work. But then when we've had stories about how much money you can make out of playing games, it sounds a bit different.
Words.
And maybe there'll still be lots of places out there, and maybe AI will be one of those competitors.
Maybe this will, spur people on. You've got to beat AI now.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the challenge.
And Formula One drivers, I love looking at some of the graphs. Different Formula One drivers in different vehicles. You watch the graph of where they're accelerating, where they're braking, the corner speed, and you lay them over the top of each other and you think, these people are robots. Their cars, even though they're different manufacturers, the cars are almost identical. We are talking down a thousandth of a second, but the humans inside them are almost like robots, getting that same braking point every single lap, nailing it every single time. So maybe AI would be challenged by some humans in a race where you've got other cars out there as well. That's what they'll keep developing, though.
Remains to be seen.
Yeah, that'll be the next thing.
When you're driving at night, spotting obstacles like animals and pedestrians can be perilous. Not all pedestrians are dressed in high-vis. While earlier models of night vision tech have employed the amplification of low light, thermography has up until now been well underutilised. That is, up until now. Matt, cars fitted with thermal tech to highlight people and animals surely has got to become like air conditioning and central locking. Every car should be carrying them as standard, surely. What are your thoughts?
So many people do actually have cars now that have got features that used to be luxury add-ons and now they're just standard. So yes, absolutely right. We've done stories before where if you introduced all the safety features that are available as compulsory as soon as they're available, the number of deaths that we would reduce around the world. But of course, manufacturers need to distinguish their cars. That's not going to happen. Yeah. But I was actually coming home just the other night, and it wasn't that late. It was probably just after dusk. It was dark-ish, dark enough that I had my headlights on. But I was driving along the road, and I just saw a little glimmer of a flash in front of me on the left-hand side of the road, being in Australia where we drive on the left-hand side of the road. And I actually just slowed down a bit and just wondered what it was. And I saw it again, and then I realised it was a cyclist in front of me, and all he had was a reflector on the bottom of each pedal. And the little flash I saw was just as the pedal came up, just at the right angle that my lights caught it. And so it was lucky, like it would have been very easy to miss that. It was lucky that I saw that to make sure I just took a wider berth around that particular cyclist. So it's very easy.
And a lot of cyclists are wearing high-vis and wearing reflectors and whatnot all over them to be noticeable. But there are still a lot of cyclists, and we're not talking necessarily about people training, but cyclists, just someone riding home from work or something like that.
That's right. Or they
who
get
are
stuck somewhere a bit later than they thought they were going to be, and they still want to get home.
And they're not dressed for it.
No. Still, unfortunately, there was a 19% increase in pedestrian deaths from 2019 to 2022. So there's still more people being killed. 3/4 of all pedestrian fatalities occur after dark. So if we can make this better in some way, shape or form, then that's got to be obviously better. So if you look at some of the thermal imaging, and some of this stuff was from the 1991 Gulf War, they introduced or created some of this, and that's now been declassified. So some of these technologies were developed in wartime, and not that it's a reason to have a war, but often we do see fast development of technology during war times when people are trying to gain an advantage. So this sort of technology, it's called Magnus thermal technology. It's already being installed in vehicles now, but it's getting dramatic improvements. And that's what's basically going to happen. Some of the hardware is being installed, but as the software gets better, we'll see more of this. So there's 30 manufacturers that are already using some of this in some form. And what they do is they basically have thermal sensors. It's looking out at the road in front of us. It can see much further away than just our lights. So to give you an idea, these sensors can pick up animals, pedestrians, cyclists 100 metres ahead of the vehicle. And when you think about that, a lot of these would be around streets, around city streets. But if you're on the highway, 100 kilometres an hour, you travel 100 metres in 3.6 seconds. So you'd see something 3.6 seconds ahead, even in our slow reflexes that humans have got. That's enough time for us to slow down or take some action away from that. And what's getting better is the accuracy, the differences in temperature. And that's what we're talking about here. Very minor differences in temperature. It can pick up a mailbox from a human because the human's got a different heat signature to the mailbox. And when I looked at some of these images that are being created, they're very accurate. They're not in colour, but they're very accurate around the shape and the image. So you can make out pretty clearly that's a human there, that's a cyclist there, that's a kangaroo there, and that's, well, even if it's a physical object, you want to make sure you avoid that, but that's a physical object that's not going to move out in the road. This can see through fog, it can see through smoke, snow squalls, not we have many of those in Australia, but overseas you do, and obviously complete darkness. So it's getting better all the time. Oncoming headlights don't affect it, so that's sometimes when you could easily hit something on the left-hand side of the road. Oncoming headlights, you're really focusing down the part of the road that you can see, but you can't see as well when that car's coming towards you with its headlights. So something on the left-hand side of the road, an animal in particular, very easy to collect while you've got headlights coming at you, but this sees past all of that. So this is good for us, humans. Obviously, it's also good when you get to the stage where you've got autonomous vehicles being able to pick up some of these things coming out in front of us. So it's quite incredible. We're getting there slowly but surely, but I would say by next year, we'll see some new cars coming along with some advertising around some of these new safety features they'll have built into them.
Tech developers borrow ideas from nature all the time. Yet a new development in air cargo from Aerolane doesn't look like it belongs naturally in the skies. In fact, it's been described as a flying piano. Nothing terribly inspired by nature there. However, apparently it's pretty good at riding thermal air currents, which is pretty darn clever. Matt, as an aircraft, this new cargo plane is a bit of a paradox.
It is a bit, actually. And I did see some birds just the other day when I was thinking about this story, and they're just so good flying in their V formation. And there was one poor little guy who was out to the side. And I don't know whether he'd been in trouble from mum and dad and he was sent out to the side, you go and work hard, or whether he just couldn't get into a spot in the V. But it was just fascinating. I was at some traffic lights. I was just watching, and I should have been concentrating on the green light, but of course my car would tell me when the light turned green. So I was just watching, and it moved around. It moved from side to side, and it was just fascinating watching that. And obviously humans, we're aware of that. We're aware of drafting. But in planes, we've got some rules in place, James. If you're flying in a radar-controlled area, you've got to be approximately 9.3 kilometres from the plane in front of you. So not a lot of chance for you to get any drafting. And that's deliberate because we've got turbulence. So it's all about safety, as you can imagine, getting away from that turbulence. If you're in an uncontrolled airspace or a space without radar, it's a lot further than that away you've got to be from the plane in front of you. So that's all done for safety reasons, so that all makes sense. But when you come to this concept, This is basically trying to work out how we can take advantage of the turbulence, take advantage of the drafting that you've got, because again, you've got a plane going at high speeds. It's got a big wake behind it, so let's jump on that. I'm really intrigued by the way they've approached this. Back in 2021, Airbus had a concept where they were flying some A350 airliners, so large planes, and they were bringing them as close as 3 kilometres within each other. They're doing it across the ocean, so they got some permission to go and do this testing rather than being 9.3 kilometres apart, and they were finding an advantage for the second plane in terms of the drafting. Could they set this up where you've got planes flying together where they're taking advantage of that? Yeah, maybe, but it sounds a bit dangerous because you've got that turbulence in there, but they proved the concept. This concept uses a wire rope. They connect a lead plane to what they call, as you said, the flying piano behind it. So it's got a set distance, it stays away from there. It's kind of safer in some way because it's got a rope attached to it, but that sounds more dangerous in some ways as well.
You've got this tow rope.
They've got a tow rope. And so the lead plane's doing all the work. The plane behind them, what they're doing with that is they're testing how much tension on the tow rope, what they've got to do with the plane that follows, how much power they've got to generate on that to see how much they can actually surf the currents and stay in the wake of the plane in front. I don't see this taking off, excuse the bad pun, taking off anytime in the near future.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to hear about the developments that are occurring with this. It's all about, I think, cargo more than passenger planes. And obviously a big part of cargo around the world, and we do know that we ship a lot of freight around the world, is about reducing the expense to move cargo from A to B. So
it's design thinking outside the square. That's the thing that's got me.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're an aeronautical engineer, there's sort of a sort of blueprint that you work towards. Well, this is sort of blowing out the blueprint.
It is. And part of it is, if I'm a pilot, I know, well, I've got to be 9.3 kilometres away. I'm not going near there because it's dangerous. And then someone says, well, let's get really close to it. Well, no, that's crazy. That's dangerous. Well, what about if we did that?
Tailgating planes.
Tailgating planes, that's right. So it is something interesting. Again, I do wonder how they'll get past the safety question. That'll be the number one question if I was CASA or FAA or any of the various authorities around the world. I'd be saying, prove to me that this is safe. You're saving fuel, sure, that's great. We love the fact you're doing that. But prove to me this is safe, that we can say, it's okay, folks, you won't have any more plane crashes because of this. Different thinking. Who knows where it'll go?
Very different thinking. We now live in a world where if something can't be 3D printed, then you probably don't even need it that bad anyway. You can 3D print anything using plastic polymers or metal. We've talked about 3D printing wood before. You can print with proteins and you can print concrete. But until now, you had to make a choice. What material were you going to print with? Choose one. Well, not anymore, Matt. You can print with multiple materials.
And also, just to add a bit into the mix, with lasers. Anything with lasers has got to be cool, hasn't it? So you can print, in this particular one, you can print with plastics and metals and semiconductors. And to get the shapes accurate and very small shapes accurate, they use a laser. So they actually do multi-layers of the different components they need. And then in amongst all those, to get exactly what they need, they're using lasers just to fine-tune those bits and pieces. Now, why do we care? What are we going to do with these things? What sort of things are we going to make? Well, one of the things we can make is materials with circuitry built in. It could be something where you're building a structure that you want some sensors built in there, some electronic sensors. I'm not talking about a bridge, but that type of thing where you might have some stress sensors, for example, or it might need some temperature sensors built in. So you could build circuit boards into something you're creating. You could build clothing even maybe. Why not? Why not build some plastic clothing, polyester type clothing with some sort of semiconductors, with some sort of electronics built in? They are talking about wearable sensors. They're talking about robots, customizable robots, medical devices. I think that's probably a really big one as well, medical devices.
Yeah, wow.
So a whole range of different things. I do wonder if we get to the point where something like 3D sounds sexy to do something, and so we use all of this extra technology to build it when maybe it could have been done in an old-fashioned method, but this is the beginning. Yeah. Multi-layers, different materials, material science, you keep saying that's the future. So I think this is one of those things where...
The way we create things and make things now has undergone a major revolution. 3D printing's
major revolution. But also, someone just came up with an idea. What about if we mixed a laser in? fantastic. What else could we do? So mixing materials, mixing lasers, and coming up with something is just the next step, if you like. Even 3D printing, obviously, wow, what a breakthrough that was. But now someone said, well, that 3D printing with one substance, that's a bit yesterday, isn't it? That's a bit 2023.
Limiting.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's do it with multiple products in there and mix those in and see what we come up with. So
Well, it makes sense.
it's quite fascinating, though, in terms of where we're going to go with this whole 3D printing concept.
Brain-computer interface. It's here, and we've told you all about the Neuralink brain chips. But in a world where skinning cats comes in 1,000 ways, getting a computer to read your mind doesn't have to involve surgery. You can always just get AI to read your mind, can't you, Matt?
You can, in conjunction with your brain activity. Now, people are probably familiar with magnetic resonance imaging, so MRIs, but of course you've got functional MRIs, and that really is focused on the brain activity, reading the brain rather than just reading other parts of our body. And so they've done some testing. First of all, did some testing on monkeys, and then once they thought they had it at an advanced enough level, they started getting humans, non-invasive. So we're not talking about Neuralink here, Elon Musk's Neuralink we've talked about before. We're talking about reading brain activity and seeing what it can determine about what you're thinking. And so to test the concept, they gave test subjects a picture. Have a look at this picture. It's got a car in the front, it's got a lovely field in the background, and it's got some mountains in the way back in the background. Look at that picture. Let AI read and interpret your brain activity, but not see the picture. Can you draw what this person's thinking? Lo and behold, AI drew an image that wasn't as good as the photograph, but drew an image that had a car on the front and a lovely field and mountains in the background. And you look at that and you say, well, it probably looks like a 15-year-old artist or someone that could draw a little bit, looked at the photo and drew it. So it's that sort of quality, but you can make out what it is. Working out how your brain is thinking about that picture compared to a different picture they'd show someone. Here's a boat out on the ocean, and then AI will draw a boat in the ocean.
And just letting my mind wander right now, I wonder just how clear my own thoughts are about visual imagery. Like you asked me to, picture a red boat floating on the ocean, bobbing around. It's got a green flag on the top. But is that a really clear picture in my head? Can I think of that right now? But it's still probably fairly hazy. If anyone was trying to read my mind and trying to draw a picture of it, I think they'd get something quite different.
And maybe the idea of staring at a photograph, and then obviously the subjects were told to think about that photograph. So you're looking at that photograph and you're looking at the details, and that's a green flag, but it's a green triangular flag. It looks like it's about 8 centimetres long and 3 centimetres high, and so you're thinking about that picture. And I just find it incredible that thinking about that picture creates different brain activity to looking at a picture of my lounge room or looking at another picture. So I take your point that just general thoughts while we're sitting here thinking at the moment, talking, what is our brain thinking about while we're doing this compared to staring at a picture and focusing on that. But what I am absolutely blown away by is that our brain activity shows enough differences that an fMRI
draw a house or a tiger,
just by looking at our brain activity. So how many variations of our brain activity are there? Obviously, different things are happening inside our brain when we're thinking about these things, but to have some external device pick up those differences to a level that's accurate enough to draw a picture from it.
It's amazing.
I'm blown away by that. Now, you've seen movies where someone suddenly gets the ability. I think there was one where Mel Gibson got struck by lightning and suddenly could read people's minds, and he didn't really like what he was hearing and seeing when he read people's minds when he'd walk into a party and say, here's this bore coming in again. Stay away from him. He's terrible to talk to. So all these things, you maybe don't want to know what people are thinking about you. But this might look a little bit different because for this to work, you just need to carry around an fMRI machine with you over your head to actually read your thoughts. It might be a bit obvious that someone's reading your thoughts. Just step into my room, James, and I'll just have a chat to you. Oh, look, what are you thinking about?
Imagine a new way of interrogation.
Well, that might be quite
stop
relevant.
asking questions and just listen to this person think.
Yeah, that's right. So where are we going with this? I assume at some point what we want to do is be able to read people's minds in particular people that have lost some physical capabilities. If they're a paraplegic, they mightn't have use of legs or arms. They might not have legs or arms, but be able to think, I'm in my wheelchair, I want to move forward, I want to type on my keyboard, I don't have arms. How do I do that? I think about the words I want to say. So that's where I think we're going with all of this, apart from just finding out what your neighbour thinks about you by putting one of these over the house. But I'm still fascinated by the fact that it can actually pick up accurately enough. We understand there's brain activity there, but pick it up accurately enough to draw images from it. That is
It's a
absolutely
brave
amazing.
new world. And while we're on the subject of blurring the lines between man and machine, our last story takes to the extreme. Last week we talked about the real skin cells, easy for me to say, to give robots a more human appearance. Well, today we are merging brain cells with computer chips. Matt, this movie is writing itself.
I really don't understand why, how, what. We've got computer chips. We kind of vaguely understand what they do.
Yeah.
We really don't understand what brains.
Superman with some brain cells in there. Well, maybe it helps us to learn how brain cells work.
Well, maybe, but we don't quite understand the complete function of the brain. We know certain things about it, but we don't know everything about it. So they're taking brain-like tissues and they're putting that on computer chips. Now, this sounds quite incredible, but it really is about trying to get brain-computer interfaces, improving that sort of link between the two, if you like. It does hold some potential, apparently, rather than just people playing Frankenstein. It does hold some potential to repair neurological damage. So maybe if someone's had some brain injury, some brain damage, then maybe a chip grafted with brain cells put into your brain can help that.
Yeah,
that
right.
sounds like a really good, noble reason to go and play with computer chips and brain cells.
But as we know, this movie plays out very differently.
It does sometimes. One of the problems they've had is that the brain cells still need some sort of nutrient supply. And so that's been an issue for them because the chip, we understand you feed electricity to that's okay. But the brain cells need some sort of nutrient. So you've got to work out some sort of way you're feeding something to it. And again, it seems like it's quite incredible that we're going to do this and then finally graft this into a human brain potentially. Sometimes I think people just like playing with things and seeing what they can come up with.
Just to see what happens.
See what we do when we put these things together. So I really don't fully understand how we're going to do this, take advantage of this, but it does sound scary and fascinating all at the same
I
time.
can just hear Jeff Goldblum's words. We thought about too much about whether or not we could, not enough about whether we should.
Whether we should, that's right.
But, look, if you can cure dementia, Parkinson's disease, with this sort of technology, that'd be wonderful. But but we also know that the cyborg warriors are coming.
That's right.
and I, for one, welcome our overlords. Anyway, and with that, I have a humongous roll of brightly coloured paper here to wrap up this episode. We are done for another week. Thanks for the gift, for your gift to the world, Matt. Thanks for another cracking tech talk.
Well, you know what I'm doing, don't you? I'm going straight back to programming. I can hardly wait to get out of here, James.
Well, I'm off to hone my skills at Mario Kart before AI goes and takes that joy away from me. Another thing that a feather to add to its cap. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson is a podcast meticulously assembled by highly skilled craftsmen from the finest materials from faraway exotic lands. It's our delight to be able to present it to you each week for your enjoyment. I'm your host, James Eddy, and all things being equal, I look forward to keeping your company next week with another shiny, new, freshly unwrapped episode to fire your imagination and present you with a world of possibilities. Bring a friend along. We'll see you then.